I do want to make sure we carve out a minute or two for us to defend the polling mechanism and the value of it. So I want to, I'm very clear that national polls have limited utility, but most pollsters are highly have a technique that is highly predictive of outcomes. We know how to predict outcomes. Some of our secret sauce, if there is any, is identifying the turnout model and then asking the question to the right people and getting the answer. So polls are very, very predictive, nationally challenging, state by state, and more local subdivisions, tremendously accurate. So I think that's important. But I do want to talk to you about, from a journalist standpoint, you bring up Morning Consult, and then there's like a national poll or some other, election poll that you might see. And there's a big difference there. There's a lot of levers that we can pull as pollsters to get numbers. The Morning Consult lever is a panel. So what that is people who have signed up. I'm an American, I've signed up and I've said, I want to give my opinion. And 30 million Americans have signed up to panels. And so there's a very diverse population of Americans that are at some interval, maybe it's once a year, maybe it's 150 times a year or 1,000 times a year, are sitting on their phone or their computer answering survey questions. There is utility to that. It is helpful, and especially in a market research world. But those are not necessarily, some can be, not necessarily identified voters. Whereas in this case, when you look under the hood a little bit at an election poll and you see it is based on voter file, it is based on an election poll that is based on legitimate identified voters, that is a very different product. That is a very different and a much more accurate and a much more, it's a place that you should have greater comfort in citing if it's a poll that was based on the voter file, which is kept in almost every state. And so I think that's one of the base foundations. If I can give any little bit of education, that's kind of ask that one question. How was the poll conducted? And if it was through a panel, then you get to take a step back and kind of ask some other questions. If it was through a voter file, I think you can have greater confidence, because also that's going to be a pollster that has a lot of election experience.